Okay. Welcome to our Payroll Hot Topics webinar for today, November 18th. We just want to do another quick sound check before we get started. So if you can hear me loud and clear, please type yes in the chat box. All right, great. Okay, so before we get started, before I pass it over, I just want to do a quick few introductions. So we have Lindsay here with us today, our assistant controller. We have Wanda, our payroll manager, and then we have several of the payroll staff joining us today. So that Lindsay and Wanda, and then we also have Cresta, who are going to be presenting information to you today, but several of the staff will be able to answer any questions that we may have throughout this session as well. Belinda will be joining us about halfway through, so if you have any questions specific to HR, we'll hold those to the end and have Belinda answer those questions for you. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda. So today we're going to talk about W-2s and electronic access. We're going to show you how you can consent to that access, where you can see electronic W-2s in HCM PeopleSoft through Employee Self-Service. We're going to walk through the process of creating an account change in HCM. We're going to talk about PEBA insurance refunds for terminated employees. We're going to talk a little bit about the 2021 pay dates. Going to talk again about furlough codes and the importance of making sure that your employees that are required to take mandatory leave are doing so. We're going to look at workers' compensation, unemployment fringe benefits, international hires, and then at the end, I'm going to show you where you can find some resources. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over to Wanda, and she's going to get started with talking about W-2s and walking you through the process of consenting and viewing.
Hi, everyone. Happy pre-Thanksgiving week. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm trying to figure out how to help my cousin cook a much smaller turkey than normal this year. So life's going to be interesting this Thanksgiving. So we're going to get started with the W-2s. As you know, next month is December. Our year will be ending, and we'll be gearing up to publish W-2s in January. And we want to kind of like take our time and kind of go back through the W-2 consent process to make sure everybody understands that and to make sure we're all on the same page as far as that is concerned. But in order to consent to receive a W-2 or a W-2C, the W-2, you automatically will receive the W-2C in the same fashion. So you don't have to consent twice. So if there's a reason for a W-2C, which we hope there would not be, but if there is one, you will receive the W-2C the same method that you receive the W-2 under. This option, which is to consent to a W-2 being electronic format, is only available to an employee after you've received your first paycheck. So if you had any employees that received their first paycheck, which is the last check of the year, which will be December 23rd according to the calendar, then they will have to go in prior to the year ending and having and make sure that they consent to receive their W-2 electronically if that's what they need to do. But remember, it's only, which will be rare, but it's only available to those employees that have already been paid, and they will actually be receiving a W-2, and that's when it triggers the system to allow you to consent to electronic or not. We're going to navigate through the process to allow you to consent. You will go to Employee Self-Service, and then you will choose your payroll tile, which is from the drop down, and then you would choose the W-2, W-2C consent tile. And that's a picture of the process. You also notice when you pull up on the payroll tile and see the consent form that there's a note that indicates that whether or not an employee currently receives a W-2 or W-C by paper or electronically. Just to explain, to kind of clarify things, and we're probably going to send another communication out to make sure everybody's clear on this issue, because I think we've already communicated with HR the fact that you can consent in for a W-2 to be delivered to you electronically, but all employees are able to see their W-2 or W-2C electronically. The consent means that you not only want to see it electronically, but you don't want to get a mail copy sent to you. Does that make sense to everybody? So I know it says consent to electronically. It can be kind of confusing. So the consent simply means I'm okay with getting this electronically. I'll go on, I'll access it myself online, I'll print it out, I'll do whatever I need to do with it. You do not have to mail me a copy. So the phrasing of it can be a little bit confusing. So if anybody's have any questions about that, please let us know, because I just want to make sure that's clear. And when you're talking to employees, to make sure that they understand that when you're consenting to only receive an electronic copy and not a mailed copy. And you would consent on the button and hit submit, and then that would allow you to only receive the electronic copy. Once you have consented, you're able to, and we produced the form, and you know, all those forms have to be available by January 31st. So once the form is made available, in order to view it, you will click the W-2 file, that tile that was within that same payroll section. So you will click on that, and it will take you directly to the actual W-2 or W-2C selection screen. And yeah. And you see here, you will have available to you 2 tax years, 2019 and 2020. Currently, only 2019 shows up, so you don't have to select anything from the drop-down box. But once we publish the 2020, then you will actually have the option of selecting which tax year you want to see. And you'll see the tax form listed there as W-2. This employee only had a W-2. There was never a W-2C produced. But if there's a W-2C produced, you'll also see W-2 and W-2C both available for you to view for whichever tax year you choose. The filing instruction box is that you notice when you get a W-2, they have on the back printed out filing instructions, and that's just that same information that you have gotten on a paper copy on the back of a W-2 of a paper copy. So if anyone needs to see that, they're able to click there and access that and see those same set of instructions. And this is just a basic review of the W-2 form. I know we've all seen them a million times, but currently we're not aware of any changes. If there are any changes, we will communicate them out to you, but we're not aware of any changes. You have your gross income. It flows through all your taxes, Social Security, Medicare, federal, state, and marks your retirement, gives you federal and state taxable income. So it's just a basic form of your W-2. W-2Cs look a little different, and that when you do a W-2C, you only have to report back to the employee the information that was changed. So if you got a W-2C, we would reach out to you to let you know you were going to get one. We would send it to you, and then if you had any questions once you receive that format, then we would go through it with you. It looks nothing like this. So when you get a W-2C, do not anticipate seeing this. This is a standard W-2 form. And once again, W-2Cs only reflect changed data. For instance, if you had a gross income adjustment, you would get a form that only showed the previous gross and then the changed gross. It would not show you all of the other categories because those categories did not change. The government only requires that you report changed information on a W-2C.
Wanda, what happens when an employee leaves the university and does not have access to the electronic W-2?
Then it will be mailed to them upon request. Now, if they terminate prior to them actually leave, before we publish them, we're going to mail them to them. But if after they left, if they had access to it prior and they left, then they would have to send us a request, and they would have to identify themselves by USC employee number, because we have to make sure we're sending it specifically to the employee. We do not like to send them, we will not send them to spouses, to children, unless someone has a legal document appointing them at that individual's legal representative. We will not submit, we will not return, or will not send out requested W-2s or W-2Cs.
Okay, thank you. I saw that Kim had her hand up. Kim, do you have something to add?
I was just going to add that just to keep in mind that if the employee chooses electronic, because electronic W-2s can only be seen on the employee self-service, if they leave prior to issuing the W-2, they will not be able to view their W-2. I know most of the reprints that I did this year, especially at the beginning of the year, were people who had chosen to receive it electronically and then left.
And so in those cases, once requested, we would have to mail them out.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions. Thank you.
And Cresta, yeah, we're going to pass it over to Cresta now.
All right, thanks, Wanda. Hey, everybody. All right, so we're going to go over briefly using the account change e-form. So the first thing you have to do is navigate to the My Workplace Fluid homepage.
Just 1 second, Krista.
Okay, sorry. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Okay, so you're going to click the drop-down button to choose other home pages and click on My Workplace. And then you're going to click on the epath homepage tile. All right, so you want to search by an employee, so you click on the search for person field and enter their employee ID. Somebody just says, I can't see the demonstration. Is that everybody?
Can everybody see the demonstration? Just type yes or no in the chat box, please. Yes. Okay.
Looks like most everybody can.
Sorry, Etienne. You may have to get your technical person to help you out there. All right.
Okay, we'll keep going. Sorry about that. Okay. So now it's important to remember here that some people have more than one job record, indicating they have a primary and a secondary job. So be sure you click on the correct record. You're going to want to click on the down arrow for the related action menu. And then you're going to click account funding change at the bottom. Okay, so the pay period effective date lookup will only show current payrolls and future dated payrolls. So if you attempt to enter one in the past, so here you're going to choose whatever date you want to make this change form effective. Okay, so now if you want to update current funding, you're going to toggle the no button to switch it to yes. Okay. So next what you want to do is click on the select chart string button, and here you're going to update the funding fields. Okay, so now here you can clear out as many of the populated fields as necessary to obtain the proper search results. And to clear out a field, you can either click in the field and then click the backspace button, or click the small X in the right corner of the field. If you know the combination code, you can go ahead and enter that and skip the step of searching. So in this scenario, we're going to clear out everything other than operating unit and account. All right, so in the department field, let's enter 1500, and then we're going to click on 150002, choose that one. All right, now click search, and sometimes it'll bring up more than one combo code. In this case, it just brought up the one, so we're going to click on that combo code, ending in 5603. Okay, so now you want to always double check that the chart string information populated in the new distribution section. Make sure there's a combination code at the end of the chart string. Okay, so in this example, the funding for this employee's primary job is shared with another college. So in this case, the pay is funded by the Moore School of Business and the College of Arts and Science. So we have to add a second row of funding. So you're going to click on the plus button and then select chart string button for row 2. All right, so here we're going to enter CL071 in the operating unit, the department, which is 100300, and the account is 51300, and then click search. Okay, so The combination code that came up with a C is a cost share code indicating a percentage of an employee's pay is funded by a project. We're going to select the combination code that begins with an A. Okay, so now before you can finish this, you have to update the percent of distribution fields for lines 1 and 2. So in this example, we're going to choose 50 for line 1, indicating Moore School of Business will pay 50%, and then 50 for the College of Arts and Sciences. So if you enter an amount that does not add up to 100, the system will give you an error when you try to save this action. I'll demonstrate that. Yep. All right. So now this account change form is complete, ready to save. So you can see if you just want to save it and not submit it, you can just click Save here. If you're ready to go ahead and submit it, you can click Submit here. And once you do click Submit, then the form will move through the normal approval process. And just a little reminder for retro funding changes, you can go to the Controller's Office website, and then there's information there on how to complete the form, who to send it to. All that information is there. All right, does anybody have any questions? Looks like we're good. Okay, great. Well, I will turn it back to Joanne then.
Okay, so it's just some things to remember, some important points. Also, did you want to go back, Lindsay, to the environment so we can talk about update and view? There we go. Perfect. So if you only save that transaction, then you can always go to update an epath form and search for that transaction. So Lindsay's going to do that. So she's going to search for the one that we just created, and she's going to click that transaction. Perfect. And if you scroll down at the bottom, this is where, so if you've decided that at the end that maybe this transaction is no longer needed, you can withdraw because it hasn't been submitted yet. Or if you think that this transaction is ready to move through workflow, you just hit submit here and it will move to department level 1, 2, and then once all of that is done, it will move to HR to payroll, where they'll make their approvals, and then the information will be entered into PeopleSoft. If you want to track, if you want to go back, Lindsay, to that to the initial page, if you want to track, where your transaction is in the workflow process, you would click View an epath form. And that is where you can tell, you can see some of you are like always questioning, you know, who's it sitting with? Why isn't my information in PeopleSoft yet? Sometimes it's because it's still sitting out there waiting for somebody to approve. And so this is where you can actually go in and view where it is sitting in the workflow. And so if you just click View Approval Route, there you go. And it'll give you, because it's still, it's initiated and submitted, perfect, yep. And it'll show you who it's sitting with and give you the list of employees that, that can actually approve that transaction.
Joanne, this is Belinda.
Yes.
I want to say that's on
Yes.
all the GT forms.
Absolutely.
Job change, that's on all those forms that you do. Y'all can go in and look at it. I'm just as a reminder. Sorry.
Thank you, Belinda, and welcome. Yes, perfect. That's for that works for all GT forms out there. All right. Thank you, Lindsay. We can go back to the presentation. So just a couple of quick tips just to remember, you know, if you can only select on an account change form. So the next slide, make sure that you're selecting the correct job, because sometimes employees have more than one ample record. So make sure before you create that account change or select account change, you're selecting it on the correct ample record. The pay period effective date can only be current or future. You can't go backwards. And if you do, you're going to receive an error. And then always double check to make sure your chart string is valid. And you do that by scrolling all the way over to make sure that there's a combo code. If there's no combo code, that means it's not valid. And then a reminder that retro funding changes are no longer done in HCM PeopleSoft, and you have to use a payroll retro funding change form, and you can find that on the Controller's Office website. And if you go there, it's on their homepage, right at the top there, listed in the at the very top of that page. All right, and I think we're going to pass it over to
Joanne, I do want to mention real quick, it
Yes.
is really important for folks that initiate those forms to follow it through and make sure that all the approvals happen, because HR and payroll can't touch those forms and get it into HCM until all those approvals take place. So it's real important to make sure that those get approved timely, otherwise we end up with late paperwork.
That's right.
Okay, I guess that's a perfect segue to late terminations. We did not plan that. That is just pure genius on Lindsay's part. I also want to tie this into what Belinda just said, that you do have the capability to go back and look at the G2 forms and see what status they're in, who's approved and who hasn't approved. And so all these actions that we're waiting to happen can happen in a timely manner. A little bit about late terminations, and that as we've been saying over the last couple of minutes, the timing of termination paperwork is very important, is very key. It goes way beyond here. It helps to avoid overpayments. It helps to avoid benefits being paid out on employees that are no longer working or work with the university. So that's why late terminations cause issues that can be corrected if we have the ability to go out and kind of stop the late paperwork before it happens. And one of the things we want to stress is that late paperwork costs money. That is the easiest way to say that, because late paperwork means that if an employee should have been terminated, but they were not terminated in time enough for people to remove them from the benefits that they have associated with them, particularly the ones that are covered by the university, then the university continues to cover those until people removes them. And it all depends on that paperwork being processed. All depends on that paperwork being able to be pushed out to people so that it can be removed in a timely manner. And once again, we'll go back to overpayments. All these discussions always lead back to overpayments. If an employee is not removed, then they will end up being paid. Have been paid. It turns into a long, elaborate process trying to recoup those funds. So that's why we got to make sure that we process paperwork timely when it comes to terminations. All paperwork, but for this particular subject, when it comes to terminations, if the university can receive a refund from PIBA in case where we proved the paperwork was late, but there's a way we had to document that it should have been, the employee should have been removed from PIBA earlier. It sometimes takes 2 to 3 months for that to happen. And if you're not careful, sometimes you end up crossing fiscal years, because 2 to 3 months is a long time to wait for a refund to be processed. So that's why we just want to stress the importance of getting paperwork done timely, particularly when it comes to terminations. Next slide. We want to go into a little bit about 2021 pay dates. We had an internal audit finding that says that our paperwork was not being completed and approved by department in a timely manner. That's why we kind of mentioned that all the ability to go out and see what stage that form is in. So if you're the initiator of that form, if you're normally a form approver, there's processes that you can use that allows you to go out and see the status of forms or pending forms or forms that are out there. Belinda can kind of expand on that. I know there's abilities to go out and see pending forms, so you know if there's anything that's waiting approval in your department, you can move it along. We want to talk about a little bit about timesheets. All timesheets, point blank, should be approved on every Monday by noon. This will, unless there's some kind of circumstance, and we understand that sometimes you have those, but this will allow us to make sure that when we do pull time for processing, that it has it has gone through the process and it has been approved. What that means is that, for instance, this Monday, and Jennifer's story is here, she'll correct me if I go off track here. This Monday, you should have been approving. This Monday's date was the 16th. So you should have been approving all time for hourly employees up through the 13th, correct, Jennifer? For that week ending the 13th?
That's correct. For
Yes.
timesheet ending the 14th.
Now, and so when we pulled time this morning, we did not pull it for that time. We pulled it for a prior period. But if you had been having all of your time approved to the 13th, then there would not have been an issue. So we just make sure everybody understands that if you go in every Monday by noon, pull time, then when that pay list email comes out, it just serves as a gentle reminder that if you hadn't gone back, just go back and approve all your time so that when we pull the time, we'll have the correct time pull. And this is key as we're getting ready to gear up and go into a whole new time tracking system. Just get into a habit of improving it every Monday. And then when if you have any other kind of time that needs to be approved that falls outside of hourly, you just follow that same pattern, and then you should be okay. Once an e-form is submitted, now we're going back to e-form, the information doesn't enter the PeopleSoft until it's approved. Once again, kind of goes back to the point of looking at where you are in the status, approving all that time, not time, but approving all the forms so that it doesn't get stuck inside of a pipeline anywhere. And it needs to be approved at all levels because, once again, as Lindsay said, payroll and HR can't do that. Departments have gotten all was passed through. We do get calls from employees asking why an action haven't taken place, and we will occasionally have to say, I can look at your form, I can tell it's still within the department, but I cannot do anything with it until it's actually processed through. Kim and I get a lot of those calls on a regular basis. The HCM support team that was in the process of creating a notification that will be triggered when a transaction has been sent and approved for 5 days. So we're going to work with you to kind of jog your memory a little bit to let it be known that you have forms sitting out there that need to be approved so that they can move to the next step so the HR and payroll can do what they need to do. And I see Kim has her hand raised. So Kim, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment for everyone to please keep in mind. Payroll does not have access to view a hiring proposal in the system. We cannot see it. So if you call asking about it, we can't see it until an epath is created to load that hire into HCM, or it is manually entered into HCM by HR. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that because I do get requests trying to find out about a specific hiring proposal that was submitted, and we don't have access to view it, so I can't provide any information on them.
And I would add to that, Kim, if it's a new hire, remember in all the PA training, when PeopleSoft training that we had, especially when we went to PeopleSoft, the new hire has to complete the critical new hire checklist because there's pertinent information on there that has to be had before it comes back into and creates a GTE form. We have to have their social, we have to have their birth dates, and it is against the law to ask all of that on the application, so we do not. So, remember that as well. So some of the onus is on the employee to complete their information before it can even start a GT, being the GT form. And I think I saw a question about, is this true for supplemental pay form? Yes, but I would say it's true form that's out there if you're in the workflow and you have initiated it or anything besides affiliate, but your supplemental forms, your job change forms, your status change forms, all of that, and all of those are in the UPKs and different things like that. That tells you, you can go out there and refresh your memory as well, that you can go out there and look on the GT form. Well, yeah, I need to understand when you say it's pending and has been approved but not executed, what that means, because is it approved by Campus 1 or by the approver 1 and 2? That doesn't mean it's been approved until either it's a class comp has approved it or someone in HR ops has approved it. And there's going to be certain days of the month when payroll, just like is going to start creating pay sheets at the end of the day today. that means, we can approve things in HR ops and class comp, but we don't put any new actions into the system until payroll has been confirmed. That's normally about 3 days each pay period. So 6 days a month. We continue to review, analyze, and approve actions, but it's not necessarily going to go into the system because payroll is working hard on that current payroll.
And Joy, pending typically means it's been saved but not submitted. So I'm not sure what happens once it's submitted, if it's partially approved at Department 1 and, as it goes through. But pending typically means it's saved, not submitted. But definitely, everybody take advantage of that view and epath form option so that it will show you where it sits in the approval process.
And everyone also remember that, as Belinda says, she has to approve and has to have all the right information in order to approve and all the paperwork. We can't pay until paperwork is approved in the system. Mm-hmm. We often get calls of people asking, well, I know I've submitted it. Can you go ahead and pay this employee? And no, we have to pay based on the information that's in the payroll system. So until it's gone through all the process and Belinda has all the correct information to put it into the system, we cannot pay until all that's been done. It's been done properly.
So we have another question. When an e-form is created and it's sent back and you have questions, who do you contact? I submitted comments with questions and comments. I emailed a person making comments for a month with no response, holding up a payment.
I will take this first from the HR side. When an e-form is created, that can be several different types of e-forms, so need more information of that. Typically from HR viewpoint, when it is sent back, there's comments in there about what needs to be done, depending on what it is, like, hey, this end date it can't be this, or on here, or if it's a hire form and the combo code is not correct, it's not valid. It's not a valid, let me say not correct, because it can be a valid combo code, but not correct. So it just depends on what it is and who it is. And there's times when, depending on who's asking the questions, if it's coming in through the salary admin box, because you'll see on there who's the person that has sent it back to you. And I noticed sometimes it's not necessarily HR sending it back. It may be someone at the approval 1 or approval 2 level. So it's just going to kind of depend on who sent it back. There's on there, and I see it was a dual, but try to do as an additional pay. If you want to email me afterwards and give me the form number and all that, I can look at it because there are certain things with duals that come into play, but try to do it as additional pay. So I'm not really following that conversation. So if you want, we can take this offline and you can email me. I'll put my email.
Perfect. But with that said, Belinda has sent, the information, and I'm not sure what payroll's business process is, but typically if it's being sent back, there's comments added, what needs to be added. And then you can also track who that person is. So I would expect that whoever is sending it back is the person that you should be contacting. Juan, did you have anything to add to that?
Just that we work closely with HR to go through the process if there's an issue. I do know that we have a lot of situations where there's a back and forth between the departments and HR, and they'll pull payroll in, and we'll work with HR very closely to make sure that we resolve all issues as quickly as possible. So if there was an issue of that type, I'm thinking maybe it was just something that was just maybe not clearly understood. Once Belinda get the details, if she needs to pull payroll in, then she can. But I'm thinking, I do know that there's a lot of back and forth, particularly when it comes around to paperwork that hits right at that pay sheet creation, confirm those 3 lock days. We have a lot of back and forth between payroll and HR to make sure that we pay everybody as accurately as possible based on paperwork that's in the system.
All right, that's all the questions we have for now.
All righty then. We're going to now just list out the 2021 payroll dates. It's hard to say 2021. So just as you know, we get paid twice a month, 15th and the 29th. There's also an active link on the payroll website that lists out up through June 30th the hourly pay periods that are covered in these pay dates. As you know, anyone else that's not paid hourly, you're paid according to salary within these 2 pay days, but hourly has different time frames that they're paid. And remember that lag employees are are paid a little bit differently for their weeks, and current employees are paid up through these pay dates. Does anybody have
We
any
do.
questions about that?
We do. Yep, we do. But once a hire has been completed, we used to be able to see pending payments a few days before a payday, so we can confirm they're being paid on time or may need an off-cycle check. But that function seems to be taken away. Do you know if we'll be able to preview payroll again, or is there another route to take to be able to see pending payroll?
Well, unless you, and I'll let Jennifer Story chime in on this, to make sure that we're heading with the right direction with this answer. And Belinda, unless you are an active payroll or HR employee, when we're processing payroll, there's no way for you to actually see that information.
Right. I guess I need to understand a little bit more about what you mean by preview payroll. I'm not sure that I'm following.
Because you can't a payroll register and you can't see payroll as we're calculating it.
I wonder if they're talking about, and they in the old days, people could see their check and VIP.
Upcoming check. Okay.
Yep.
Is that what? Okay. At the
Yeah.
employee level, the upcoming paycheck, is that what?
Yeah, they used to be able to view
Okay.
it before we confirmed the payroll.
Right.
Right, and we don't have the ability to do that now.
Right.
You can see it as soon as your ACM distribution entries are generated. What's the timing on those, Jennifer? But you
I
can,
think it's in self-service 1 or 2 days before.
yeah,
But yeah, they could see it the whole time. Yeah, now that I know what they're talking about, no, I mean that's just not functionality that's in the current system, the way it was before.
No, and please remember, I know we discussed this in many of the training sessions and all that. When we were implementing PeopleSoft, the HCM portion with payroll, we did not customize things that did not need to be customized. So if it wasn't a regulation or something like that, we had to keep it vanilla, and that was one of those things that we noted as a change management, and we don't foresee that changing anytime soon.
correct. But like Jennifer said, they are, I think there's 2 business days before, able to see an actual in self-service, a paycheck. Might be one or 2 days before you're actually able to see that actual paycheck. And if there are any employees, and we haven't had any issues with this, I don't think, that require off cycles, the request comes in, we look at it, and we've been trying to work with each department very hard to make sure, first of all, there's a limited number of off cycles, but if there's off cycles are absolutely necessary, that they get processed and they're processed timely. Furlough, and I'm so glad Belinda made it back before we got to this section. I was holding my breath for her to make sure she's here, be part of this discussion. As you all aware, we implemented our mandatory furlough program for faculty and staff on the Columbia campus and in Palmetto College. And this faculty and staff who are paid a base salary of $118,000 or above. The mandatory furlough period is for 2021 fiscal year, and it began July 1st, 2020. And as a reminder, because we have very, very little time left, half of that mandatory furlough has to be taken before December 31st. So if you have an employee that falls in that bracket, then they need to take it before December 31st. The days of the tier based on salary is, if you are tier 1 base salary of $200,000 and above, you have to take 20 furlough days. And if they have to have them taken, they've got it, because their way it's working, their paychecks are already being impacted by the furlough, so they need to take the time. Tier 2 base salary of $118,000, between $118,000 and $200,000 have to take 10 days, and 9-month faculty with a base salary of $118,000 have to take 10 days. So they need to take their furlough time because their pay has already been impacted by furlough. There's a detailed information out in the HR toolbox on furloughs. That information has been pretty steady, pretty consistent. But we just want to take the time to remind everyone else that they need to make sure that they take that furlough before December 31st. Belinda, did you want to add anything to it, Lindsay?
Hold on, I was on mute. What I would say is, I sent out to all the college divisions contacts last week a list of everybody that who have taken mandatory furlough days that have been entered into ITAMs and days remaining that they had to take, with a reminder that everybody had to take half by the December 18th. So, and I had asked everybody to touch base with anybody that had not taken it yet to make sure that it was scheduled to be taken, because as stated, it was in their letter that they need to take half of it by December 18th. That 18th is the last Friday that you can have a full week, Monday through Friday, which is what the furlough days have to be taken in. And so just as a reminder of that, so hopefully, you know, that was conveyed to the college division contacts last week. Now, I know a lot of people have been looking at it, so I appreciate all those that did.
Okay,
You know.
so it's the 18th. So Joanne, before we're going to publish this presentation?
Yes, and we'll add that date.
Yeah,
Yeah. December 18th is the last Friday of the last full week in December that are all working days.
Okay. All righty. The next is the furlough reporting and ITAMs. And just as a reminder, mandatory furlough days must be reported through the ITAM system using the furlough mandatory code. Voluntary furlough days must be reported through the ITAMs system using the furlough VOL unpaid furlough hours voluntary code. ITAM approvers, just as a reminder, it is important that supervisors ensure that you're approving the correct information regarding mandatory furlough. Ensure correct codes is used, mandatory versus voluntary, because it matters. It matters when we're calculating how paychecks being calculated, and you can't, in my opinion, you can't double check that enough before we actually create pay sheets and actually begin a payroll period. So make sure that you have mandatory and voluntary properly identified. Mandatory furlough hours used to ensure mandatory days are taken, but monitor your furlough hours to ensure that you have your mandatory days taken but not exceeded, because then we have the reverse issue. So make sure that as you're approving, you got the right code, mandatory versus voluntary, and then make sure that someone's not taking more furlough than they are supposed to take or allowed to take. And exempt employees must take the 5 consecutive days in the FLSA work week. Example is a mandatory furlough entered from Monday through Friday and no work performed on the previous Sunday or the following Saturday. So when it says furlough, it means furlough. You cannot work, no emails, no phone calls, nothing of that nature should be happening during a furlough period. Does anybody have any questions? So once again, approvers, you have to be very careful with that time, and please remember to monitor it, which also goes back to Belinda's point of making sure everybody takes that time by December 18th.
No questions at this time, Wanda?
Continuing that, since mandatory furlough is planned, mandatory furlough must be entered into ITAMs at least a week before it's taken. So because it's known, if you enter it into that ITAMs in a week before it's taken, because they will be gone the week that they're supposed to record it, and they're not able to do anything work related. Due to the complexity of mandatory furlough, it is strongly recommended to have a timekeeper enter the mandatory furlough into ITAMs to ensure that the accuracy is complete and everything is done and it's done correctly in order to help us when it comes to pay calculation. All 12-month exempt employees affected by mandatory furlough, a reduction in salary started in your paycheck on 7/15. Remember, I mentioned you've already gotten dinged for the furlough, so you need to take it. All 9-month exempt employees affected by the mandatory furlough, their reduction in salary started on the 8/31 check. So everyone that had mandatory furlough is already paid or forfeited their income, so they need to make sure that they take the furlough time. And then on the next slide, we've got a list of the furlough earning codes, just as a reminder of the codes that need to be used for reporting. And does anybody have any questions on furloughs? Because we only have a little bit of time left, because Belinda did say December 18th, and I was thinking the end of the year, but we are technically closed on that period, so December 18th. it's a lot closer. It's exactly 1 month away. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about international hires. And I think I will pass that over to Lindsay. Did I?
All right. Well, in the current environment that we're living in, COVID, more and more employees are working remotely, and we've had notification that some of them have been doing so internationally, which presents a potential liability issue for the university. The university is not set up to manage international payroll, and employees, whether they're U.S. citizens or not, if they're working in a foreign country, it can create a tax reporting liability. And it could put the university at risk for owing taxes and potentially interest and penalties to the country that they're working in. So if you know of someone in your department that is working internationally, please notify Wanda or Belinda, and we will work on a plan for them, because we do need to contact legal and our tax advisors to figure out how to handle that situation. What we want to avoid is creating a permanent existence in that country, and then all of a sudden we're having to do international reporting and handle treaties and that kind of situation. So please, if you know of somebody that is working internationally, even for a short period of time, please notify us so that we can assess the situation and figure out how to handle that.
Because we do not want to create a taxable presence. That's the key term. And you have to be very careful that you follow rules and regulations from a tax perspective, not to create a taxable presence.
Yes, and I do want to mention, after we have been talking to a tax advisor, depending on the work that the employee is doing, it not only creates a tax liability in terms of payroll taxes, but can also generate an income tax issue for the university. So if the employee is, teaching classes and things like that is generating money for the university, it could potentially create an income tax issue for the university in that country. So just wanted to mention that as well. It's not just related to payroll taxes. Okay, for workers' comp and unemployment, those transactions, when we first went live with HCM, were processed via journal entry, and it was done manually each payroll. With the 1015 payroll, we were able to have workers' comp and unemployment automatically charge to the employees' fringes, and that's reflected in HCM distribution now. So you can do all your reporting for the 1015 payroll and forward using HCM distribution, and it'll match the GL. Anything prior to 1015, if you need to do a retro transaction, the adjustments to workers' comp and unemployment will still need to be handled manually, because those transactions did not come from HCM originally. But anything 1015 and after for retros, that will be handled through HCM distribution, and you'll be able to see that. Just want to make that distinction so that when you're doing reporting, whether it's retro or live payroll, 1015 is your date of reference for whether it'll be processed through a JE or through HCM distribution. And you can look up the workers' comp and unemployment transactions in HCM distribution using the search criteria below. You can search it by the employee, journal, department, operating unit. In the distribution type, you would just need to put in tax. And then you can select a specific pay period or month. And if you change the output criteria to fringe, detail, vertical, it'll show the details for that pay period. So you can see here that we've got the unemployment tax, and then this local tax right here is your workers' comp. Any questions on international payroll or workers' comp unemployment?
No questions right now, Lindsay.
All right. I'll let you talk about the HCM PeopleSoft resources.
Thank you. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but we have actually archived the HR payroll website. So it is no longer out there. But if you are still using some of the old links, it should redirect you to where those PeopleSoft resources have been moved. So currently in the HR payroll toolbox, we have moved anything related to employee self-service, manager self-service, and anything related to account changes that are done by business managers. All of that information has been moved to the payroll toolbox, as well as the steps for how to access to gain access to HCM. And so that would be a great place to direct any of your new employees that need to create a service ticket to request access. We also have a new page for our time and labor absence management implementation. And so there's not a lot of information out there right now. It's pretty much the same information that we included in the mass communication that we sent out. But as we move further within this implementation, we'll be adding more info, maybe some monthly newsletters. And also this is where you'll be able to get access to training as we get closer to that. And so, there'll probably be another mass communication coming out, especially if we add some new information to this page. And then also at the end of this presentation, after this presentation, we'll make sure that the recording and the PowerPoint presentation is placed on the payroll toolbox page as well under payroll hot topics. So if anybody wants to review what we covered today, or you want to share with an employee, a friend, you're welcome to do that. And I think that brings us to our contact page. So if you have any questions about W-2s, please send those questions to USC Pay at mailbox. And there are several people in the payroll department that monitor that mailbox. Mandatory and voluntary furlough guidelines, please reach out to HR, and Belinda's team can help answer any questions you may have. Any ITAMS questions, please make sure you reach out to Judy Timmons. And international tax, Jake Keel is your guy. And then if you have any questions specific to the time and labor absence management implementation, please send those to cmteam at mailbox.scd.edu. Myself and Teresa, we monitor that mailbox. And if we can't answer the question, we'll make sure to reach out to the project team, get those the answers to those questions for you, and respond back. And I believe that takes us to our last screen, which is our questions screen. So if you have any questions before we sign off for today, please take the opportunity to ask, because we have several knowledgeable people available to provide those answers for you. Okay, we don't have any questions. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday next week with your family and friends. And I'm thinking we'll schedule a Hot Topics in the new year. If not January, then definitely February.
Everybody be safe and have a great holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.